So I'm kind of a story vampire, and wherever the most crazy stories are, I want to be there. And I came to find out that the most crazy stories are...
Welcome to Cat Greenleaf from Talk Stoop and the Soberness podcast. We are so excited to have you here today. Thank you for coming on Sober Spill.
Thank you for having me. I am so pumped to be here. I love the space. I love what you do. So thank you.
Well, I just wanted to start with, if you could share just like some of who you are in case anyone doesn't know. And I will definitely fill in like some bits if you're not going to brag about yourself and some of your incredible history. But I would love to hear, what you do and how you got there.
Okay. So I now host a sobriety podcast called Soberness. It's a celebrity interview podcast. And the reason why I focus in on celebrities is because that was my job for years and years and years. I started my career as a features reporter at WNBC, doing human interest stories all over New York City. And when my first son was born, I really wanted to work at home. And that's before COVID and before everyone worked from home. And this really simple, beautiful little idea sort of landed at my front stoop, and it was to interview people sitting on my stoop. So I was planning on just interviewing like the mailman, and I had a seltzer delivery guy at that time, and real New York characters. But very quickly, celebrities saw it and wanted to be on it.
That's wild. So they saw you and wanted to come on?
Yes.
And it was like, was it a podcast part? It was a record. I know it was recorded.
Podcast. There were no podcasts in 2009.
Yes, it was pre-podcast.
Yes. No, so... it was a really interesting moment in time because the taxi TV was really big in New York City. I don't know if you remember.
Yes, I do remember that.
And
so there were little TVs when you're in the taxi that you could watch. You could see like realtor commercials too and all sorts of things. That's what I remember most, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was, I'm kind of the grandmother of the cabs. I was there right at the beginning, and so everyone was taking cabs at that time. It was before Uber and it was before iPhones. So people were literally a captive audience. So you had to watch it if you wanted any entertainment in the cab. So I was on with my feature pieces, but when I started doing the show, they went right into the cabs, and
that's wild.
Yeah.
They put you, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Can we just go back to what are feature shows too? Like what
a feature story is, so, the guy who makes the biggest donuts in New York City, or the cloisters, where did they come from? Or what does the borough president do on his day off? Color pieces, fun pieces, not, I don't think anyone would really trust me with the serious news, and they shouldn't. So
it was like really dynamic, very like, just like live, like what's really happening.
Yeah.
And more insight into people, like who they are.
Yes. And I was so lucky to be able to do it because, I'm really curious, and I wanted to get behind every door in New York City, and this job allowed me to do it.
Yeah. So then you start Talk Stoop. It's like 2009.
2009. Yep.
Okay. I remember where I was in 2009.
Where were you?
I had just moved back from Texas. I had been in South Texas. I was working at the VA hospital, and I came back and I started at Mountainside Treatment Center out in Canaan, Connecticut.
Cool. So yes. Okay. So you remember the era.
Yeah. I remember that era. And I especially remember, like you said, a life sort of pre-cell phones the way we know them, flip phones, maybe basic, like listening to some music probably at that time, but very different attention span and very different, like engaging with a cab driver, talking, having to have the unpredictability of not having a ride waiting for you.
Yes, it was a really different world. Listen, it's no secret that smartphones changed our lives overnight. So sometimes we forget how radically different our lives were not that long ago.
Yeah.
And this was definitely a show for that time. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. We're talking about Talk Stoop now?
Yeah, I was just curious. So no worries. So you had Talk Stoop, and celebrities actually, it sounds like they were watching it and they wanted to like come and talk on your stoop.
Right.
Come and just talk.
Well, so what happened was, so the very first celebrity, God, I'm such a workaholic. So my son had just been born, and I didn't break stride. I ran the Boston Marathon my son's adopted, by the way.
I didn't know you were a runner.
I am a runner, but
I don't know how I missed that and everything I've listened to. Do you still, we're going to go back to this, but do you still run like that kind of distance, like marathons?
I do, but again, so I'm kind of a story vampire, and wherever the most crazy stories are, I want to be there. And I came to find out that the most crazy stories are on ultra marathon routes. So ultra marathons are 250 miles. And so I used to be a pacer. So I would go, 10 miles with someone and then another pacer would take them another 10 miles because you want to keep that person awake. 250 miles takes a long time. And there are no better stories than in the middle of the night with some ultra marathoner who's telling you the crazy tale of how they got into it. So I really loved running for that, to be around the hardcore runners.
Yeah.
Anyway, but when my son was born, he was adopted, so it's not like I gave birth and then ran the Boston Marathon, but I just didn't even. Anyway, so
There's still a lot. Yeah, just like the bonding time, the sleepless nights, the feeding, learning to have a first child. I mean, it's a lot. It's a busy time.
And I was like, yep, as long as I can keep working, everything's fine.
Yeah.
But anywho, so my son was probably a couple weeks old. We started the show and my first guest was, my mom and then my neighbor. And then I was at this work event. That's why I was talking about being a workaholic, because even though he was just a week old, I was out at some work event at Cipriani and Rosie Perez there. It was a Latino AIDS benefit. And I just walked up to her, and now I would never, I don't know where I got the balls at the time, but I walked up to her. I was like, hey, I'm doing this show on my stoop. I heard you're in the neighborhood. Do you want to be on my stoop? And, I'll be on your stoop. And then she came and was on my stoop. And then Tommy Lee was in a taxi cab and saw it and then told his publicist he wanted to be on the show. And that's how it started. I never would have gone towards celebrities, but it happened organically.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was really wild.
It's really interesting. You're right. It's a lot about the timing and who you were and what, people wanting to share, I think, in a more authentic way, like in a more human way.
It was, now people have podcasts in the craziest places and it's not that unique. At the time, to get a celebrity to get in a car after the Today Show or Good Morning America, come across the East River and sit on a stoop in Brooklyn was unheard of. And it wasn't lost on me for 1 second, Jana. I mean, it was a very lucky job and I loved every minute of it.
Oh my gosh. And they must have loved, like the station must have loved it too. Did you let people come into your house and get ready? Because you didn't have a green room.
That's funny you say that. My husband said
says
that the kitchen, which was the green room, was really the real show.
Yeah.
And we always had food out. In the beginning, I was baking cookies and using our own mugs. So we had an early guest was Ralph Macchio. And I'll never forget it because I did have a favorite mug, oddly. Anyway, I had 3 mugs out that were almost identical. And when I was serving him coffee when he first came in and cookies, and he said, before he went to reach for a mug, he said, wait, do you have a favorite? And I did. So it was really wild. So anyway, so he was an early guest before we had sponsors. As things developed, Cozy Sandwiches, I don't know if that still exists, was a sponsor. So we had big spreads. But I used to leave open bottles of wine out because I wanted guests to let loose if they so felt. It turned out the publicists were the ones really drinking the wine. But whatever, I didn't care. I loved to party anywhere I could find it. So so inside the house was really cool. And then there were some big stars who ended up using our architects or, complimenting our style choices. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. I just couldn't believe it. It really meant a lot to me. And yes, our little teeny tiny bathroom under the stairs in the house really saw some action, some celebrity ass in there. Yeah.
So wild. I honestly love that you just even just the celebrities you just mentioned, like Ralph Macchio, that's so my era, the original Karate Kid. Yes. He aged so well. Can we all agree how good he looks? Now they put the star out and he looks amazing. And it just, I don't know, it's nice seeing people. It's like a reflection of ourselves. When we age and we see people
how
grow
good
up
we look as we age.
That we're taking care of ourselves. No, but he just, I don't know. I find it really grounding.
Did you watch Cobra Kai?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. With the one with Will Smith's son.
No. Okay. Yes. I mean, maybe that's called that too. But there's a series, Cobra Kai, that's it's the blonde guy and it's Ralph Macchio, and I watched it with my kids.
Oh, the new one. Yeah.
We're really into it.
To see that one.
I love it.
I'll have to watch that one.
It's worth it.
Okay. So that's wild already. Was there ever a time that you felt any intimidation with people coming to your house? Oh my God, is my house clean enough? Is my bathroom clean enough?
No.
That's where do you get those nerves of steel?
Well, here's the thing. I was in control. They came to me. So when you're in control, why are you scared? You're in control. So and also putting that show together was so organic. There was not one false moment. So I was absolutely in my element. I was absolutely comfortable at home. I wanted to be near my babies. I wanted to be near my dogs. And I got to do all of that. And so I was chill and I had nothing to prove because they already wanted to come to me. So that wasn't scary for me. Now I'm scared of everything, but then I wasn't scared of anything.
Hi everyone, Pat McCarthy here. If you're a parent, spouse, sibling, or anyone whose life has been touched by a loved one's substance use, Mountainside's Foundation program can help. This virtual workshop provides personalized, therapist-led support, offering real tools to navigate your family's healing journey. Find out more at admissions@mountainside.com.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, I've listened to a lot of your pieces from sort of some Talk Stop, but more from Soberness. And I was thinking of the Run DMC piece where he talks about how celebrities, and it sounds trite when I repeat it, of just like they're like everybody else. Everyone has guilt and shame. Yes. Everyone is human. And I wonder if that also was an element of it, even back then, like before you got into sobriety, of just recognizing just the human experience.
Yes. And when people walk into your home, they're not going to be jerks. My babies were adorable. They were around. My dogs were sweet. They were around. There was always, a mom or a friend or someone hanging out. So it was very calm. They also have dogs and babies and moms and friends and houses, so it wasn't a highly charged atmosphere with a million lights. And, early on, dude, we kept the cameras in the shower.
Wow.
It was so, God bless you. That's okay. We can break the fourth wall.
Yeah.
He just sneezed. Anyway, it's a sneeze. And to wit, that was a big part of the show's magic. We'd be sitting outside and suddenly, a plane
something's
is
going to go by. Yeah.
Yes. Right. Horns are beeping. Dogs are walking by. Things are happening. We had a UPS guy who just loved being on the show.
Oh, yeah.
And so he would just show up all the time and mug for the camera. And we let it all happen. And so that made it easy. Here's the other thing that made it easy. You are naturally reclined on a stoop.
Yeah.
So you're already leaned back. You're already chill, So there were many things that just fed nicely into giving the show a really easy vibe. And then one that I learned by accident. So I used to just run upstairs to change my clothes between every guest. And this one day, it took me a pretty long time to get changed, not for any real reason. By the time I came down, Eva Longoria was the guest, and I hadn't greeted her. I was already upstairs when she came, and then I stayed upstairs for a long time. But she had been in my space for such a long time that by the time I came down, she greeted me, and I was like, that's amazing. She felt comfortable enough to greet me. And so from then on, I waited a long time so that guests could settle into the space. The other thing that we did in that space to make people feel comfortable is no family photos. I'd spent a lot of time on the road, shooting shows on the road. And one of the things I loved the most was being in hotels, because I looked around and there was nothing, no triggers, no nothing, no piles of bills I had to take care of, no family photos of a time when I was thinner or fatter, or, things that might upset me. So when we moved into that house in downtown Brooklyn, I wanted to emulate that same style for me. That was long before the show. But then when the show started, I realized it had a really positive effect on the guests as well.
That's so interesting. I mean, that's something we do too, actually. So I work at Mountainside Treatment Center, and we thoughtfully don't have pictures of our families around. We don't put pictures of our kids up. We don't have a lot of personal effects around so that people can focus on their work. And it is more of a very warm, calming, grounding blank space. It's not austere, as you see, it's really, there's a warmth to it, but there's a way in which I think those things can be distracting.
Yeah, of course.
And I know for me, actually, professionally, I love it. There's also a way, too, where it just allows me to just focus on exactly what I'm doing, exactly where I am in the moment.
Singular purpose.
Yeah. But that's very interesting that you were able to do that in your own home.
Yeah.
And that you opened your home up in that way. So I've got to go back to the wine out, too. At the time, were you drinking? Would you have a glass of wine with the guests ever? Or as you're getting ready, Never. So it never crossed that line.
I'm a terrible drinker. And even though I loved it, I knew it from the start. So the last thing we needed was me being drunk on my own show. That would have been a problem.
Yeah. So that's amazing you get to have that firewall. So Talk Stoop, and then how did you transition, to where you are today?
Well, it was a bumpy road.
Yeah.
So I lost that job at the end of 2017. It was just, it wasn't, I was drinking or pounding Adderall and that's why I lost it. It was just a it was a bad moment in my life. It all went down very badly. I've since signed an NDA, but it went badly at the end with NBC. And so, luckily, and I really mean luckily, we were already in the middle of buying a place in Coney Island on the beach. And so if I had had to stay in that house where all of that life had taken place, it would have been really challenging. So I was able within a couple months to move out to the beach. So that's early 2018. And I sat on the beach for a good few years before I was able to do anything. I was so devastated. I loved my job so much. And I was also in the throes, even though I wasn't drinking anymore, I was a big fan of Adderall and then Ambien. Adderall for the day and Ambien for the night.
Yeah.
And that was, so I knew I had to work through that.
Yeah.
Now, my process was, it was just my process, whether it's good or bad, I don't know. But basically, I decided to just sort of stare at the ocean and not think about anything that had happened. I just put up these steel trap walls, and that's how I got through. Because, when I face great loss, I can't even breathe. It's, I didn't know how that I had 2 young kids. And when you go from being so busy every hour of the day to having not one thing to do, scary.
It's like a screeching halt. And I think actually a lot of people that listen to our podcast can relate. We have a lot of people that come to us that have to hit the pause button, or it's being hit for them, and it does come to a screeching halt. Please give me your cell phone.
Yeah.
Welcome here. I'm going to go through your bags, and welcome. And it gets really simple of like just the distractions taken away.
Yeah.
And I'm, it's different obviously too. Then I think most people say in the end, they having that time and space is actually the biggest gift to getting sober. Just that time and space away without the distractions, without the cell phone, without the pace, and being so caught in how important everything feels when we're that busy.
Yes, 100%. I hated not having anything to do. I hated it. And so I tried to create busy, and but in the end, it was a really good time for me to start healing.
Mm-hmm.
And, after the first few years of just trying to stay breathing, I little by slowly started to let in healing. Also, right around the end of 2017, I had started working with a new spiritual teacher. I'd long been on the path, but not so actively in the last few years leading up to when I lost my job. So if not for that work, I don't know where I'd be. It was really important during that time. And I went on retreats all over the world and was really just trying to survive. I had, again, a real workaholic. And I don't think that's a bad thing, by the way. I love work, and I'd loved it from the time I was a tiny kid. I always realized, if there are 24 hours a day and you spend 10 of them away from your family, you better love that job.
Yeah.
You better love what you're doing.
Can I ask, what did you want to be when you were a little kid?
Busy.
Yeah. Okay. Can I tell you what I wanted to be?
Tell me.
I always wanted to be Sally Jesse Raphael. That era. I know. This is my dream. And Oprah and I have the same birthday. I will say that. We have the same birthday. So I always wanted to do this, but I ended up going into therapy, which is very similar, but behind closed doors. It's very different actually in a lot of ways.
So how do you feel now that you're doing it?
Oh my gosh. I'm going to be honest. It's very intimidating. It's very different than therapy. Therapy, like probably similar to you, I've been doing this for quite a while. I've been doing this with Mountainside, in the VA since 2009, doing therapy, always in substance use disorders. But doing the podcast is very different because I'm not used to sharing parts of myself, and I know it comes out in therapeutic work. You always are who you are, there you are. But
Yep.
This I find really intimidating.
Why did you go into therapy instead of doing what you wanted to do?
Oh, I don't know. I think similar to your path, it found me, and I knew as soon as I started that I was home. Like and I knew too with substance abuse, especially like, oh God, I don't know why it makes me feel a little emotional, but like I love this work so much. I love my clients. I always say like addicts and alcoholics are the most creative, empathetic people you'll ever meet. And I really respect people that have walked the line, that have like walked to their own edge of like, let me see if I can try everything I've ever wanted to try. Like there's something about that I really that I gravitate towards. And maybe it's similar to your ultra marathoners. There's something probably in the extreme, but I think for me, it actually is more in the humanity, more in, we all have human suffering to different degrees. And this struggle sometimes brings people more close to it. I also do hospice, or I did do a lot of hospice work before I had kids. And I actually found it quite similar. It's like the life on life's terms. Like, this is where your life is. And
That's
we
why I
gotta
like prison work.
do it.
That
Yeah.
same thing, the exact same thing. This is where it is. So
Yeah.
there's no skirting it. It's a very different thing than this life out here in the world where there's a million choices and a million different ways to go about things. When you're in hospice, there's not a million choices.
No.
When you're in prison, there's not a million choices. Did you have addiction in your family's history? Is that why you started in this field?
Yes, I think every family does. Like, do you know a family out there that does not have someone in their life that struggles with addiction? Okay, I knew that it wasn't your direct lineage, but I always wonder, and I want to ask you on that topic, how was how were alcohol and drugs talked about when you were growing up? Like,
They
what
weren't.
did your
They didn't
parents?
exist.
Well, I mean, they existed, but
Right.
just not in your home, or?
They didn't exist for my parents. It wasn't a thing. They didn't. No one didn't. There was no drinking. There were no doing drugs. It wasn't like that. My parents were pretty straight edge. And by the way, good for them, because in their 80s they look amazing.
Oh, good.
So
Well, I always think
that's like
this
clean living gets
is
you.
the best anti-aging there is. Everyone wants
Yes.
all the anti-aging things. The number one thing you can do to anti-age and reverse your age is stop
Yeah.
drinking.
Are you sober?
Yes.
How
Yeah.
long?
I don't want to talk about myself actually now, so we're going to switch it back to you. But I do want to talk more about your childhood, in that if your parents didn't drink or do drugs, it sounds like, did you have any wild teenage years?
Yes.
Yes.
Every wild teenage year.
So
Yeah.
how did they handle those? How did they manage those?
By turning the other cheek. If they didn't look at it, it wasn't happening. And I'm not saying that they were trying not to pay attention to the fact that I was clearly drinking problematically, that they just were those parents that if they didn't see it, then it wasn't happening. And by it, I mean partying my balls off, or, my sister and I stealing. Like, my early drinking was in McDonaldland glasses with the lead paint on the outside.
Yeah.
My sister would pour from the box or giant bottle of wine that was in the closet that nobody ever drank. We'd pour these huge tumblers of wine and drink.
Did your parents ever find out the wine was missing from the tumblers?
No, because they didn't. They
Okay, I will
literally
tell
never
one
drank.
personal funny story. So we grew up with a Chinese restaurant. My grandmother had it through the late 70s and 80s. Good fortune. It was a beautiful banquet restaurant in New Haven. So anyway, she closed down the restaurant at some point in my life. I was probably 12 or 13 maybe. And my parents we have an old colonial, very old historical town, and it had this one bathroom with a galley. We call it the bowling ball bathroom, and it had all these big doors, and you just put toilet paper and things behind it. And they just decided, they had a 12-year-old and a bunch of other kids under me, and they decided they put all the alcohol from my grandmother's restaurant in there. And then fast forward to my parents moving out of that house a few years, in 2018, my mom called me today. She's like, "Oh my God, do you know I opened and emptied every single one of those bottles and there's not alcohol in any of them?" Yeah, all four of us went through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yep,
gone.
I know, right?
But it's just
That's
so funny that they
amazing.
kept it. Because again, it's kind of similar though, of to me, that seems very innocent and naive that they just kept it all in the bathroom. It was
Yeah.
a full bar.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Totally. We're going to houses had bars. All our houses had bars in them, but
Oh, wow.
for entertaining, not for using.
Yeah,
So,
ours, my parents didn't drink, so it's just in the bathroom, literally with the toilet paper.
That's so
from
funny.
from BJ's or Costco.
And you put water back in the bottles?
Oh, all sorts of things,
Yeah.
water, dye, but yeah.
That's hilarious.
So anyway, so your parents, your sister, you and your sister were a little wild. They're just
Yes.
going about it.
Yes. If we had even done this conversation 4 months ago, I would have told you I was born an alcoholic and it was just always going to go that way. I now am starting to feel, I know that whether or not I was born with alcoholic tendencies, I have been drinking at some traumatic things that happened as a child. I developed a pretty serious case of depression early on when I was 9. And so I'm 53 now. So this would have been 80, 81. And depression was not in vogue in the way that
Oh,
it is
no.
now.
I mean, kids in public school have mental health days now. Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
That was
It's
not the case then.
Yeah.
And
talked
so I think nobody quite knew what to do with me. And it led to a lot of really wild feelings of separation, of being ostracized. And then, I'll go one level deeper with you. What brought it on was my grandmother died when I was about 7. And I've always been spiritually connected. And she instantly started coming to me. And no one believed me. And then they thought I was nuts. And that led to self-isolating, which invited so much, I'd say concern. And it was concern. But the way I interpreted it was...
you weren't allowed to share it, though, too. So you
Right.
couldn't connect.
Correct.
Yeah. So it sounds like mass disconnection. Like, that's not happening. So instead of stepping in with curiosity about, like, what is Cat going
Right.
through, it was met with, like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that was very unfortunate. I think the people around me did the best they could with the tools they had. But it wasn't... well, anyway, that's what happened. So I now realize that I have been trying to drink that away all this time. And that was a very profound time in my life. I have only even started remembering that time within the last 3 years. I had just shut it down. It was so painful.
Yeah.
And I had to learn to mask very quickly. And so, whereas I used to think I was a born alcoholic and it was always going to be that way, now I realize it was greatly in response to that time in my life.
It's interesting, like, thinking about that, too, and you going back to the ocean and, like, the grief and the loss of the show, that I think, something I've been taught, about grief, too, is, like, our grief is to the degree that we love something. And when you weren't allowed, to suppress that love for your grandmother and that grief. And then sounds like the grief, then the show, too, was like a huge wave.
Yeah.
Being able to finally feel some grief and sobriety, when
Yeah.
things slowed down.
Yeah. Grief is the worst. It is the worst. I hate it so much. Not only do I hate it so much, pretty shortly after I moved to the beach, I guess not so shortly, I was starting to feel better. So let's say it was like a few years in, 4 years in maybe. One of my best friends took her own life, really out of the blue. And I made a choice. I can't go to that grief yet. I am so shaky on my own 2 legs that I am not available for that. And again, I've always sort of lived between worlds, and I don't feel her totally gone anyway, but she's gone and, physically gone. And only now that I'm feeling stronger am I wading slowly into the grief of losing her. But I have experienced enough grief in my life that I can say I do not do well with it. I don't like those waves that hit you out of nowhere. I don't like the there's nothing to like about it. But what you just said about you grieve to the degree that you love really resonates, because I love so hard and I feel so hard and so big, and I always have. And as a young person, I didn't know to identify grief. But as I got older and got to feel what grief felt like, I can say wholeheartedly, I do not want to feel it. And so I've actually been interested in watching my own reaction to my friend's passing and how I've been able to, little by slowly, incorporate the grieving process. But I'm also taking advantage of this quirky gift I have to sort of be in touch with other realms. And, that's got to sound freaking nuts. And I'm sorry about that, but that's my reality. And at 53 years old and no one's paying me not to say shit, so I'm just saying it.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing it with us. I do want to actually sort of talk about that. What is the difference of really getting to control your own narrative? I want to say it was interesting watching, because I've binge watched You got to check out her episodes. They're amazing. Margaret Cho, Run DMC. I love the Rumor Willis ones.
Yeah.
Anthony Weiner. I mean, so amazing. And then, from back in the day, Kim Kardashian, Vincent D'Onofrio. I mean, all these incredible people. But anyways, what I was noticing is, I hope it's okay to say this, but like there's such a visual difference between you in the Talk Stoop days and then how you just seem very embodied in a different way, even like your clothing choices and everything in your own podcast, like Soberness. Like I just see you differently. I mean, you were very like, obviously yourself, I think on Talk Stoop, but it just, your hair, your makeup, everything, you seem different. And I'm curious if that's like, was that like partially because it was like work persona in some ways, even though it was in your house, and now the podcast, although it's still work, it's different, but
I'm different. I mean, that was 2009 we started, and that lasted for 10 years. And so I was 37 to 47 and I'm now 53 and I have really been through stuff. I hadn't been through anything as an adult by the time Talk Stoop happened. It was just like fun. And I was a different person. I have done so much work, not because I wanted to, but because I had to over these last few years. Interestingly, though, it wasn't until starting Soberness that I really felt like myself again. So when I lost my job, I vowed never to go back to broadcast. It had broken my heart. I am never going back. And that's that. And so I set about trying to find, well, what will I do with the hours of my life? And I started, I couldn't get hired anywhere, by the way. I couldn't get hired in a minimum wage storytelling job with the Coney Island Storytelling Project. I couldn't get hired as a dog walker. I couldn't get hired as anything. And right, so we started this nonprofit that was like the closest to my heart. And even then I didn't feel like myself. And
what was your nonprofit?
Oh, it's called Restorative Housing. It's the Restorative Housing Organization.org. Check us out. Basically, moving to the ocean had such a profound effect on me. And I'm so like white, Jewish, and guilty that I had to share it. And and so what we do is we've worked out a really nice little formula. We purchase undervalued waterfront houses in the 5 boroughs. We hire formerly incarcerated men and women to help us renovate them, and they can live on site during the life of the project. And then we make them available to Section 8 voucher holders. And that way, the most people that can be served are served.
And there's more equity in who gets to even see the water. I mean, globally, we have such a challenge with that. Some of the most beautiful beaches in the world, obviously, we know like the people that live there can't access them. That's incredible to give people more equity in that. And this is just the second chance. I mean, we've talked before previously, we both really have loved some people that do have families, and it's very difficult sometimes to find like employment that pays after that, depending on who you are and what what kind of resources you have when you get out. It's extraordinarily
It's really
difficult.
hard.
Yeah, it's really
100%.
hard. And just unfair. And again, we've talked about too, the complexity, not that everyone that is, goes away or does something bad, that we absolve everything. But I just do think, we know there's a lot of systemic things.
There's a lot of systemic things. And the way I have to look at it is that person is still alive. Whatever they did, they're still alive. The way I see things, God saved them, or God chose to keep them here. And it wasn't to make them suffer and be poor every day the rest of their lives. And finding meaningful employment, and by meaningful, I mean that pays you enough to live, is so challenging, even for people who don't have a record. That's my favorite part, is trying to help people make some real money.
Hopefully make some generational change. Because I think too, again, where it often hurts the people that have no advocacy, no voice, and children, that their parent can't get a job. So again, not to absolve anyone for what they've done, but like, if we're not going to at least be able to help the next generation, what are we doing?
Yeah. What are we doing? Yeah. It's really complex. This, now I bring recovery meetings into prisons, and you see how it just derails people's lives, and so many of the people in my groups are addicts, so unfortunately their disease led them to this terrible place, but it definitely could have been me. And those same challenges could be facing me, not to mention the trauma that there's the trauma that led you to get into prison. Then there's the trauma of prison. And then there's the trauma of trying to have a life once you get out of prison and how hard that is, and it's something I'm endlessly fascinated by. It makes me sound like a tourist, and I don't mean that, but I feel dedicated to it. I feel dedicated to, I don't know, to helping out.
To going in, I think it's sharing what you've got. And sometimes base level, that's all we can do is like share what we got. But in that way too, you're not even charging for what you've got. You're going in, using your own gas money, and getting there to give what you have.
It's my favorite time of the week, actually.
Yeah.
I really love it.
It's amazing. I'm curious too, a little bit about your family. So you mentioned you're a white Jewish woman.
I am.
And you've adopted children.
Mm-hmm.
Are you raising them Jewish?
Oh, good question. It's funny. I was before the pandemic. I mean, I am. Like they were half and half, so my husband's not Jewish. Although we just found out through 23andMe before it went belly up that he's 13% Jewish. I knew it. I knew he felt familiar.
You found that.
Absolutely.
You found that 13%.
Yeah. So they don't. But anyway, so they were in Hebrew school before the pandemic, and then that just sort of went sideways. They don't seem to feel it. They don't. So I'm following them a little on that. We try to give them a little bit of structure, but it's not really holding, because I actually, although I believe in God very deeply, I don't believe in religion, or not believe it. I don't really care. Believe in whatever you want, but I don't get anything from a book. The same way I don't read the big book. That never did anything for me. I'm an experiential learner. So it stands to reason that they didn't just vibe toward Judaism out of nowhere, and they're Black, and there aren't a lot of Black Jews in America. And so they probably don't have a lot of identification.
How have you navigated, I feel like even saying the word like transracial adoption feels weird to say that. I don't know now, but like how do you navigate that? It's like a white
with
mom.
love.
Yeah.
With love. Same way you navigate anything that your kid is dealing with. There's a lot of racial humor in our house.
Okay.
There's a lot that we talk about all the time, because when you have young Black boys in America today, there's some real concerns and they need to have their eyes open. And, my kids are entitled. We live in a gated community in Coney Island. Like, they're entitled. There's nothing that they've ever wanted for. There's nothing. So I need them to very much understand that they can't take that entitlement out in the street. But I think any mother of Black children, no matter what color that mother is, has to have some really hard talks about about the racist climate of our country right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel honored to be able to have those conversations with them and to try to help them see the light of what's going on. But in our family, beyond being a point of humor and from time to time, it's not.
Well, I think what's interesting, though, just even the way you are, it's very different than when you talk about the way your parents didn't talk about it. They didn't talk about it. Turn the other cheek. That is talking about it, though. When you bring, and I think that to me is the most important thing, is acknowledging.
Yeah.
Acknowledging our differences, and then acknowledging our humanity and where we're all the same. Like, just that ability to see both and hold both can be very diametrically opposed, but also true, that we all are very different, but there are a lot of the base level things. This has been so amazing, Kat, and I feel like we didn't even get to, again, listen to the podcast, you'll hear more of your story, but how long have you been sober for, roughly?
I have been sober from alcohol coming up on 12 years.
12 years. Can I ask about Adderall?
That all went away. That's the worst stuff. That's the devil. I've been sober from
a lot of people are struggling with it now. So
yeah, because it's delicious. It's amazing. I was like king of the world on that stuff. You can just do anything, but it will take you. Listen, I am a true addict. I'm a true addict. I cannot have one of just anything. I don't want to have one of just anything. And Adderall is just this sweetest whisper in your ear of how thin you're going to be and how much you're going to get accomplished. And I loved it. So I've been off that for 9 years, I think.
And keeping your energy up and still running and all the things. So there is life after stimulants. Right? Yeah, there is life after stimulants. So well, thank you so much. Do you want to share anything in closing?
Well, we are coming back with our second season of Soberness.
I can't wait to watch.
Thank you. It's we're starting out with a live. So we do this thing called the Soberness Story Hour.
Yeah,
which is live at the Algonquin Hotel. So September 29th. with E. Jean Carroll.
Wow.
Yes. And so we've widened our focus a little bit to talk to people who've survived anything. And it doesn't have to just be alcohol and drugs, and it's anything. And so she has certainly survived and won, and I want to hear how she did it. And so that's going to be 7:00 at the Algonquin Hotel, September 29th, 2005, to kick off season 2 of Soberness.
I can't wait. Well, thank you so much, Kat.
Thank you.
We would love to have you again. I have so many more things I want to talk about, but thank you for your time today.
You make an excellent Sally Jesse.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
All my dreams have been made. Coming from a pro.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, Mountainside can help. Call 860-365-6764 to speak with our caring treatment team.